Hells Angels is a group of angels. No, wait, they're guys. A group of bikers doing their thing. This corporation is almost like the Yakuza, except they go on bikes in a group. Founded back in 1948 in Fontana, California by a man who goes by the name Otto Friedli, the gang did have their fair share of fame associated with criminal activities. It was easy to spot a Hell Angel as they had a signature style. The majority of these Hells Angels members were white males riding Harley Davidsons. These members have different monikers, a colorful one to save their identities. They work in a very controlled environment, and it's not easy to become a Hells Angel. Talking about uniforms, they even chose bars and clubhouses as their offices to discuss business, and for trips they went in troops riding their Harleys. It might seem like a group of men having fun, but they had secrets which couldn't hide for long. Several members have faced law enforcement scrutiny for involvement in crimes such as illegal substance distribution, racketeering, and violence. Even though they seemed untouchable, the state got to them as the club was involved in a murder. This implies the club cannot protect themselves from justice, but also shows how sloppy they could get. Most of the members have ended up behind bars, and here are 7 of them reacting to life sentences. Number 1. Adam Lee Hall.
Over there at the house on Sunday afternoon to meet with you.
20 miles away.
Adam Lee Hall was shoved into the spotlight as one of the central figures in a heinous crime that shocked the entire Berkshire County in August 2011. Hall, along with his team members David Shaw and K.S. Viovis, faced charges for the abduction and murder of 3 individuals, including David Glasser, the intended witness against Hall. During the trial, prosecutors revealed that Hall held a high-ranking position within the local Hells Angels chapter, which put the club under speculation. The trio kidnapped Glasser along with his roommate Edward Frampton and their friend Robert Chadwell from Glasser's residence in Pittsfield. While the officials searched for them, tragically all 3 victims were later found dismembered in Beckett, about 14 days after their disappearance. In separate trials, the jury found Adam Lee Hall guilty. He was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. Judge Kinder, presiding over the case, noticed and remarked on the extreme depravity and lack of regard for human dignity demonstrated by Hall and his accomplices. But that wasn't all. Hall was also handed 2 more consecutive sentences, 12 to 15 years for armed robbery and 8 to 10 years for kidnapping. The trial shed light on the brutal treatment carried out by the trio on David Glasser, and the sad part is that he was handpicked by Hall just because he was weak. He had a mental disability and was vulnerable. Frampton and Chadwell were present at the scene, and they were treated as collateral damage, were also targeted just because they were witnesses. The families of the victims were satisfied with the strict punishment imposed on Hall, but Hall showed no signs of remorse throughout the trial and sentencing. He just stood there. Number 2. Neil Cantrell. Neil Cantrell, a biker and a leader of a 2016 extortion plot, along with his son Stephen, 38 years old, and fellow Hells Angel Robert Lowry, committed a heinous act resulting in the death of an associate and the assault of former gang leader from Alberta. During the trial, BC Supreme Court Justice Ward Branch acknowledged that Neil, who was at the ripe age of 62, played the leading role in the extortion scheme. The judge also believed that the defendants deserved a more severe sentence than they ultimately received. In 2020, about 4 years later, all 3 men were convicted of kidnapping, extortion, aggravated assault, and overcoming resistance for their brutal attack on Robert Houle, an old friend of Cantrell over a decade ago. In December 2014, Houle traveled from Edmonton to talk about his resignation from the Hells Angel gang and leave the illicit drug trade, offering his baton to Cantrell. But Neil didn't respond until 2 years later in 2016. Neil arranged a meeting the following day. That was the last Houle ever seen alive. Houle was kidnapped and violently beaten at a roadside pullout near Hope. But these greedy men took Houle to his house and tried to make him sign all of his property to their name. Gladly, the RCMP officers intervened, and Houle was hospitalized for his extensive injuries, including cuts, broken bones, and a burn on his forehead. At this point, he knew he was a target, and so he entered witness protection. Something about the gang makes them very insensitive, and Neil too had no signs of regrets and just stood there with no remorse. The reports say that Cantrell believed he was owed money and was determined to claim what he assumed was rightfully his. Neil had influenced his own son to commit a crime, and he was basically extorting from his own friend, doing that to him, but I'm sure Houle would never have thought that in his wildest dreams about a friend doing that to him, but he is a stoic, I'll give him that. He was calm and composed, listening to the face of doom. How can someone be that greedy? Number 3. Emery Martin. Emery Martin is a veteran member of the Hells Angels. He went by Pitt. He was a long and troubled history associated with the biker gang and is no stranger to jail. He spent over 20 of his 63 years behind bars and was involved in the violent and deadly biker war in Quebec. He has a long list of crimes and was convicted of trafficking narcotics. He's been in Hells Angels for more than 25 years. Martin initially worked as a drug dealer within the Montreal chapter, but later moved to the New Brunswick Nomad chapter in November 2016. In October 2021, he was working as a senior executive in an interprovincial narcotics ring. Martin was among several individuals arrested in 2018 during Project J Thunderstruck, an RCMP-led investigation targeting high-volume bulk trafficking from Quebec to New Brunswick. His trial was meant to go for 4 months, but he owned it up and saved his time. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison, but it was reduced by 6 months as he was assaulted while he was incarcerated. Number 4. David Giles. David Giles, a lawyer member of Hells Angels, received an 18-year sentence in 2017, and one of the longest ever given to a BC member of the notorious biker gang. He was convicted for smuggling half a ton of illegal substances 5 years prior. Giles was 66 years old and was in a very bad shape, struggling to even breathe as the BC Supreme Court Justice delivered the reasons for the sentence. With credit for pre-trial custody, Giles had to serve as a net sentence of 11 years and 1 month. Giles, as the vice president of the Hells Angels Kelowna chapter, acted as an equal partner in the conspiracy, orchestrating a smuggling deal with undercover police posing as South American suppliers. His associate Kevin Van Colleren also pled guilty and received a 16-year sentence. Giles' lawyer argued for a lower term due to his critical illness, but the judge rejected it, acknowledging Giles' significant role in the drug trade over several years. Number 5. Norm Cox and Rob Thomas. Norm Cox and Robert Leonard Thomas, both full-patch members of the Kelowna Hells Angels, were involved in a tragic incident in June 2011 that resulted in the death of Dane Phillips. Along with 4 others, they brutally attacked Phillips, who was attempting to peacefully resolve an altercation between his sons and 2 teenagers who were a part of the Hells Angels. Using a baseball bat and a hammer, Cox and Thomas struck Phillips on the head, killing him in the act when Phillips was just trying to resolve the conflict. In sentencing, both Cox and Thomas received 15 years in jail for their involvement, but their sentence was later reduced to 12 years after considering the credit for their pre-sentence custody. Number 6. Zane Paula Wallace. In August 2019, Jasmine Tamara Wilson was found unconscious and severely injured outside the emergency department of Wanganui Hospital. She later succumbed to her death. She had endured months of violence at the hands of Wallace, her then partner. Jasmine's sister conveyed the profound and lasting pain caused by her sister's loss, while urging Wallace to reflect on the consequences of his actions. Wallace was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 15 years and 6 months for taking Jasmine's life. The courtroom proceedings were tense, with clashes between Wallace's and Jasmine's families. Wallace had a history of violence, with previous convictions for assaulting previous partners dating back to 2014. The fatal incident was the culmination of ongoing abuse, with Wallace repeatedly attacking Jasmine in the 9 months leading up to her tragic death. Number 7. Dean Daniel Kelsey Dean. Kelsey, a Hells Angel member, was involved in the assault that led to the death of Sean Simmons, an innocent man in Dartmouth in October 2000. Alongside 3 other individuals, Kelsey was charged and later sentenced to life in prison for his crimes in March 2003. The sentence was later downgraded to second degree on appeal. Sean was alleged to have an affair with one of the Hells Angels member from the Halifax chapter back in early 1990s, and that was the motive. But Kelsey didn't stop there. Even in prison, he assaulted his fellow convicts, but Kelsey was granted parole in 2019, after living 18 years of life in the prison. These stories tell us about the darkness humans are capable of. Justice was served, but it was served cold, and it's painful to see how calm and composed some of them were. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and we'll be back with more videos like these. Have a good day.